Hey, how you doing? My name is Santito, and welcome to a new video. One Piece is currently in the Wano arc, and we're approaching the end of it and the story as a whole. The endgame is near, and some may even say we're already in the endgame. So today I want to discuss something that I've been thinking about for a while, and that is, what are Zoro's final swords in the endgame of One Piece? The purpose of this video is not to theorize or hypothesize, so I will not be pulling information from the manga, nor will I be using any evidence or showing any proof to back up what I say. The video is just strictly for sharing my opinions and what makes sense, knowing how Oda is and how the current story is playing out. Firstly, I will talk about Zoro as a character and where I see him in the future, both story-wise and power-wise. Then I'll discuss his current swords, how and when he obtained them, and whether or not I believe he will keep each one. Finally, I'll discuss which sword I think Zoro will obtain, or may obtain, and why I think they make the most sense. As the leading swordsman and first mate of the Straw Hat Pirates, Zoro has some pretty high standards set for him to meet. Luffy is going to be the man who defeats the world's strongest beast, aka Kaido. Luffy will also help the Kozuki clan reclaim Wano and free the country from the Kurozumi clan's authoritarian rule. If Zoro is Luffy's right-hand man, he has to be right behind him in terms of power and impact. Zoro will develop significantly by the end of this arc, and he already has. His strength has increased tremendously from when we last saw him fight in Dressrosa, and even then he looked impressive. I think it's safe to say Zoro has secured his place as a top tier fighter, but I don't know if we can put him in the category of GOATs with Big Mom, Kaido, Whitebeard, Roger, Rayleigh, etc. Luffy and Blackbeard are on their way and are almost there, but Zoro has quite a ways to go, but it's pretty plausible that he secures a spot with them. To get there, I think it makes sense though that he turns all or most of his swords into black blades, which he has never done before, not even with one sword. However, he has had the chance to wield one for a long time, Shusui, one of the 21 great grade swords. Zoro recently gave up Shusui and obtained Enma, the legendary sword that once belonged to Kosuke Oden, and it is powerful. He has also been holding on to the Wado Ichimonji, a sword Zoro has had since Oda introduced him to us. The last sword he has is the Sandai Kitetsu, a Meido, or just a grade sword, which he has had with him since Logtown. We don't really know much about the black blades, but we know that forging a black blade requires using it in countless battles. Since he has had both the Wado Ichimonji and the Sandai Kitetsu with him for a long time, I imagine those swords will become the black blades first, since he has had those for pretty much the entire story. He just got Enma, so I don't know if he'll forge a black blade from it anytime soon, but Oda can be pretty unpredictable, so we might see that becoming a black blade at the end of the Wano or Elbaf, but I don't really buy it. And yes, I believe we are going to Elbaf after Wano, where the Straw Hats will meet with Shanks along with his crew, and Mihawk. Shout out to Morge on that one. Zoro will then fight Mihawk and probably forge one or more of his swords into black blades, but just a thought. Now, which sword or swords will or may Zoro pick up by the end of the story? Will he get any new ones, or will Enma be the last new one he gets? Well, firstly, I don't think Zoro is ever going to have more than 3 swords at a time. We know Zoro loves to use 3 swords because he has never had more than that. I suppose you could say he holds on to 1 for safekeeping, but that seems pretty out of line with what we've seen so far. Zoro either loses a sword because it gets shattered, or because there's a plot point where he has to give up or lose a sword to obtain a new one, so it's safe to say that he'll only have 3 in the end. Secondly, I think Zoro also has to get or forge a supreme grade sword. Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, has a supreme grade sword, and Zoro is coming for his title. So it only makes sense Zoro has to have 1, at least 1, when he eventually becomes the world's greatest swordsman. I guess you could say Zoro can go against the grain and not have 1, but I don't think Oda would do that. It seems pretty far-fetched. Plus, having a supreme grade sword would greatly show Zoro's progression and how far he's come in the story, so I can't see it any other way. We did learn from Hitetsu that if Zoro makes Enma a black blade, that he could increase the grade, or well, he said the rank, but I think he really means the grade, and become a supreme grade sword. But as I said before, Zoro just got Enma, so I don't think he could make it a black blade by the end of this arc or the next. I think he'll make it a black blade by the end of the story though, but we'll see. Now, I do think Zoro will obtain a new sword soon. I know we just got Enma, so it's pretty wishful thinking, but Enma serves as a replacement for Shusui, so it doesn't feel like much of an upgrade. Don't get me wrong, Enma is a fantastic sword and has some new abilities and features that we didn't have with Shisui. Plus, Enma isn't a black blade while Shusui is, and it already was one when Zoro got it from Ryuma back in Thriller Bark, so Enma's potential room for growth with Zoro is massive. However, I still think Zoro will get a new sword, primarily because of this. Zoro has the Sandai Kitetsu. Now, you might not know what I'm getting at, but essentially, I believe Zoro may get the Shodai Kitetsu, one of the 12 Supreme Grade swords, by the end of the story. For one, the Sandai Kitetsu is a grade sword, which isn't too impressive. Out of all the grades, the Sandai Kitetsu has the lowest one. Above it, there's Skillful Grade, then Great Grade, and finally Supreme Grade. If we assume that making a sword a black blade increases its grade, then the Sandai Kitetsu would only make it into Skillful Grade territory. Imagine Zoro, one of the greatest swordsmen in One Piece, at least by the end of Wano, walking around with the Skillful Grade sword. Now, the grade of the blade shouldn't speak to your prowess as a swordsman, but it is somewhat symbolic nonetheless. I can't see Zoro wielding a grade sword much longer, so it only makes sense that Zoro gets rid of the one sword that doesn't encapsulate his power as a swordsman, and that is the Sandai Kitetsu. We've already seen Luffy with the Nidai Kitetsu, one of the great grade swords. Luffy won't carry it around with him forever, so I suppose Zoro could get it instead. But I think we'll see a massive power jump when this arc ends, and I don't know if the Nidai Kitetsu will be that much of a leap. As I said before, Luffy and the Straw Hats are going to save quote-unquote Wano, and to do that, they have to take down the Beast Pirates, including Kaido, and at least ward off Big Mom since she's in Wano too. That will be a tremendous feat that has to happen for this arc to end in the best way possible. And the Daimyo and Kozuki clan of Wano will probably reward the Straw Hats for doing that. Each pirate might not individually get a reward though. It might not even be something physical, but more of like an abstract reward, like a strengthened relationship with Wano as a whole. And they might even get a new member, who knows? But I think the people that play a more significant role in this battle will receive something greater. For Zoro, I believe that to be a supreme grade sword. And how fitting would that be to receive a sword of such stature in the one place where the best blades ever known are made? It just works out too perfectly. Maybe Zoro doesn't get the Shodai Kitetsu, but a renowned blacksmith makes a custom sword for Zoro? That could be pretty cool, and shout out to Zach, I'm D King, for that one. I guess it also makes sense that he doesn't get a supreme grade sword since he isn't the greatest swordsman yet, and maybe getting a supreme grade sword marks that achievement. Still, he will probably get 2 from perfecting Enma and the Wado Ichimonji, making them black blades, so I think it would be fine if he got one at the end of Wano. In conclusion, I believe that there are 3 main options for Zoro's next sword. However, I can only really see him getting one more sword at this point. Those 3 swords are either the Shodai Kitetsu, Nidai Kitetsu, or a custom-made sword of great grade or supreme grade quality. Ultimately, Zoro will have 3 black blade supreme grade swords. Wow, that was actually kind of hard to say. I don't think Zoro will lose or get rid of Wado Ichimonji since he has had it forever at this point, and it holds sentimental value to him. Also, Zoro will probably hold on to Enma for the rest of the story since he just got it, and he has taken a liking to it pretty quickly. It was entrusted to him by Princess Hiyori, and there are pretty high chances that Zoro will find out his lineage goes back to Wano. He will also realize Enma's importance in its power and its symbolism and significance to Wano, so it makes sense that he keeps it too. That leaves the Sandai Kitetsu and means the Shodai Kitetsu, Nidai Kitetsu, or Zoro's custom sword will take its place. The only problem I see with the Nidai Kitetsu is that if Zoro gets it, it would only make sense to get the Shodai Kitetsu after, and I don't know if there's much time left in the story for Zoro to make proper use of both swords. In this case, Zoro gets the Nidai, uses it for the rest of the story, and at the final war, which will probably be against the world government, he receives the Shodai Kitetsu right after during the war. This could happen seeing as though many people believe that one of the Gorosei currently has the Shodai Kitetsu. So I guess Zoro getting the Nidai Kitetsu in Wano makes some sense. However, it would be awesome if Zoro gets to show that Kitetsu in Wano, which obviously means that the Gorosei wouldn't have the sword after all. Obviously, these two cases don't work well together. It's just a matter of what you believe is more probable, so either one works for me. But currently, I'm hoping that Zoro gets to show that Kitetsu in Wano right now. Thanks for watching. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know what you all think in the comments. Do you believe Zoro will get any more swords at this point in the story? If you do, which sword or swords will they be? Drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more content just like this. See you all in the next one.